Welcome back. In this lecture, we will be discussing on the topic agility. Last lectures, we discussed what is traditional software development life cycle and what are the problems in such a life cycle. And also, we discussed on the requirement engineering process. Now, let us discuss why there is a need for agility in software development lifecycle and why people have come across have tried to change the conventional software development lifecycle by seeing the several limitations of such a conventional model. In this lecture, we'll be discussing on the topic agility and the basics of agile framework. What is agility? So if you see, there is a rapid and incremental delivery of software because the development guidelines stress on the delivery over the analysis, the design, all those. But these activities are not discouraged. And there is some continuous communication between the developers and customers. Because conventional development show tells you that in the beginning only your customer will be communicating their requirements. Whereas there is some continuous communication between the customer and the engineers. That is much more important. The Agile Manifesto tells that the individuals and the interactions over the process and the tools. Working off a software over comprehensive documentation because just by having a very wholesome document is not much important. Always working on the software is also important. The next one is just the process and tools are not important. Interacting between the individuals and the customers, getting their requirements is much more important. The contract negotiation is not just important. Than that, the customer collaboration, getting their feedback, again, trying to build the gaps. That is much more important than the contract negotiation. Responding to changes is much more important than just following the plan just which we have made. What is an agile process? It is driven by the customer descriptions. What he wants, what are his requirements. This recognizes that the plans are short lived because first he may require something, whereas he can also have some changes. The customer priorities will here and there change. So the plans are just short lived. We have to make sure iteratively these plans will be just done. And it is much more important that analysis, design, construction, and testing are not being just predictable. Always there is adaptiveness. The adaptiveness is very important in agile process because there is unpredictability in the real-time process. This delivers multiple software increments, which is delivering an operational prototype or the portions of an OS in order to collect the customer feedback for adaptation. We shall see the agile principles now. The first agile principle is our highest priority is just to satisfy the customer through early and continuous delivery of valuable software. Welcoming the changes are very important in agile practice. Agile process harness the changes for the customer, which is much important in a competitive advantage. We have to deliver the software frequently. It is not after few months you deliver only a product. Small product, that is, the frequently you have to deliver your product within couple of weeks or within a couple of months. You have to deliver something. Delivery of the product in a small increment is very important in agile principle. Business people and developers must work together in order to deliver all these throughout the project. This collaboration is very important and it should be motivated. We have to trust the job and support each other. This is very important and we should be convincing. And the convincing of the customer should be done face to face conversations. That is why extreme programming is more important. What is extreme programming? Extreme programming or XP is originally proposed by Ken Beck in the year 2004. It is an object oriented approach. It begins with user stories. What are these user stories? It describes the required output, features, and functionality. Customer assigns a value or a priority to every user story he builds. And the Agile team will assess all these user stories. If more than 3 weeks, then they will split each user story into again smaller user stories. And they will work together so that all these user stories will be a deliverable one. On increments, on every release, they will be giving a deliverable. Yes, it is done using three ways. Either all the user stories will be implemented in few weeks, or higher priorities will be given to the important user stories first and it will be delivered first, or the riskiest user stories will be delivered first than the remaining. All these are in the hands of the project team. And after the first increment, there will be some deliverable out of the user story. The customers can add the user stories here and there, delete the user stories, exchange the values or importance of the existing user stories. Anything can be done. They can split the user stories according to their needs in such agile practices. In your XP, extreme programming, if you see, always the CRC will be encouraged. That is class responsibility collaborator. And always the refactoring is also encouraged. That is on iterative basis, the internal program design will be done and not the complete structure will be delivered at the final end. This helps for a minimal chances of errors and it is more efficient to be done. That is why XP coding and XP testing are very important in agile practice. If you see, it encourages the pair programming. What is pair programming? Two people work together at one workstation, and if you think one is capable of doing something, other is also capable of doing the same. So they take the slight different roles and they even exchange their roles here and there so that it will be done quickly as well efficiently. What is XP testing? All the unit testing are executed daily and it is ideally should be automated even. Regression tests are conducted to test the current and previous components, whereas the acceptance tests are defined by the customer and it is executed to assess the customer visibility. That is why XP coding and XP testing are very important. If you see, this is the basic of the agile principles. That is the XP programming. If you see, the planning is there, then it is design, then coding, then testing. Planning is writing the user stories along with an acceptance criteria and an incremental basis, iteration plan. Then designing is your CRC designs. Then coding is pair programming. Both will exchange them, both will be doing it, pair programming. And you can also include refactoring in the coding. Then testing is unit testing and acceptance testing. After the testing, it is finally release of the product. The release will be always in incremental basis, not the complete product will be released. On incremental basis, small factors will be released. Velocities will be released. This is your extreme programming. Moving on to the Scrum. What is Scrum? Scrum means it is a unique method where it promotes for self-directed teams. Daily team measurement is important in a Scrum framework and it avoids a prescriptive process. That is, on each iteration, you can be giving some deliverables. That is your Scrum model. if you see the Scrum model, yes, Scrum model has the sprint planning, daily Scrum activities, which is very important. Along with that, like the stakeholders will be communicating all these things in the sprint planning, and it happens in the daily Scrum activities. It will be given for the product development, and if there are some gaps, we'll be finding out in the sprint reviews, and even a sprint retrospective review is helping to solve the gaps. Some key practices includes self-directed and self-organized team. Daily stand-up meetings are very important. Usually after 30-day iterations, this will be checked, and no additional works can be included, but if it has been included, that is also fine here. This shows the daily Scrum activities. So the Scrum has all these. Scrum has been used by Microsoft, Yahoo, Google, Electronic Arts, Lockheed Martin, Philips, Siemens, Nokia, IBM, Capital One, BBC. Also in Intuit, Nelson Media, First American Real Estate, BMC Software, IPS Switch, John Deere, Nexus, Sabre, Salesforce, Time Warner, Turner Broadcasting, and OS. Then, what for the sum is being used? For commercial software, in-house development, contract development, fixed price projects, financial applications, price certifications, embedded systems, for 99.99% uptime requirements, for joint strike fighter, websites, satellite control softwares, video game development, handheld software, mobile phones, network switching applications, and some of the largest applications that are being used. Anyhow, we'll be discussing Scrum and Agile practices in detail in the upcoming lectures even. So if you take the project management process stages, it has 5 stages. The first one is initiation, planning, execution, controlling, and closure. What is under initiation? Defining the project's purpose, scope, objectives, and it identifies the key stakeholders, creates the project charter even. Project planning has a project plan to be created, the work breakdown, structure, and risk management strategies. Project execution means executing of the task, workflows, and how it has to be assigned, the task, which task should be assigned to which team member, and how it should be tracked, all these. Project monitoring and control is how should you regularly review the task, monitor the progress, monitor your key performance indicators, and apply the changes whenever it is needed. Final closure is delivering the project within the deadline, and the documentation also should be done within this time. So all these 5 stages are important under the project management process stages. First of all, we should define our project. How to define our project? A project is a temporary endeavor. It has a beginning and an end. It is a time-based activity, right? You have to deliver a product out of a project. You have to be successful after a project is completed. You have to fulfill the aims and objectives within the limited period, along with the limited budget that is being given. So that is why the characteristic of a project is very important. Your deliverable should be SMART. What is SMART? Specific, measurable, achievable, realistic, and time bound. Always the project outcomes should be SMART, specific, measurable, achievable, realistic, and time bound. Yes, here and there you can have some risk, and time, cost, qualities are the important constraints, but it should be a SMART outcome. We have to ensure that the project objectives are realized, the deliverables should be done, and you have to deliver it within the budget, And the applications of the knowledge, skills, tools, and techniques have to be important under the project management. But why the project management is important? A project lacks poor management, then obviously it will be ignored by the customers. Project delivery is always influenced by several factors such as skills, tools, clarities, that is the resource, even the clarity among money, man, mesh, and other materials. Lack of having a proper management among these things will obviously lead a customer disliking the project or the product at the end. That is why there is a triple constraint always. What are those triple constraints? Three things that are important constraints for a project: scope, schedule, and resources. Scope management is very important, time scheduling, and the resource scheduling. So, scope, schedule, resources are the triple constraint that been under the project management. Yes, if there is a change to be done, it can be done here and there. That is also allowed. So what is scope? Scope involves the range of tasks required to accomplish. The scope is one of the three main elements to be kept in balance in the project. As I told, it is very important and it includes all the works that has to be completed within the timeline. What are the resources? Resources is not only personal, human resources, it is even equipment, elements, funds, budget resources, everything comes under your resources. Schedule, timeline. Schedule is very important. While the time can be modified slightly here and there, but we have to maintain the timeline. This indicates the sequence of events or tasks within the timeline. That is, successful project management is a continuous process and it has to be completed within the timeline. And that is why it is very important that you have to first define the aim, plan, decide, implement, and control this. So, in the next lecture, we shall see more in detail about the agile principles. Thank you.